Today we're having a look at patch 13.13 a week after the updates, and seeing how all those changes affect our tier list. We're going to get straight into the video today and start off with the top lane. In the S tier we have Akshan, Fiora, Jax, Kayle, Kled, Malphite, Maokai, Olaf, Ornn, Poppy and Rengar. Not really too many changes that affected the top lane this week though, so instead let's just have a quick look at some of the strongest choices. Ornn is still the king of the tanks. He's one of the most consistent choices to go for, and he has so many great lanes to play into. Ornn offers surprisingly good dueling potential in the lane phase. He has incredible gank setup, and his teamfight presence with that engaging ultimate is probably some of the best in the entire game. Ornn is pretty simple to pick up and learn, but has a really high skill ceiling too. And to be honest, no matter what the game state is, no matter what the meta is, Ornn will probably always be a fantastic choice. So if you learn him now whilst he's in a great spot, you won't be disappointed. Akshan is also still one of the best solo carry snowballing champions you can play in the top lane. Akshan has solid early game damage that he can use to start snowballing. He can roam around the map with that W stealth and swing into lanes with his E, get kills and reset back out to safety again. Yes, he can stomp lanes, yes he can snowball, but he also scales really well too into a side laning, split pushing, flanking assassin that can revive his whole team. Akshan has had a pretty impressive ban rate since his release, and there's no surprises there really. You don't see him that often, but when you do, you always remember just how broken he can be. So if you are looking for a bit of a pocket pick to abuse those low range lanes in, go for Akshan. Cho'Gath is also performing really well at the moment across the majority of ranks. If you build him full tank with a heartsteel, you will absorb a ridiculous amount of damage. And every time you attack a different target, you'll probably chunk them for half their health instead. Cho'Gath has tons of disruption with those constant knockups and silences, and a lot of burst damage too with his ultimate. He's really easy to play, he's really solid in lane with those poke for the minion wave with his E, and before you know it, you chomp a few minions, you chomp a few enemies, and you got so much health the enemies can't deal with you. Well, let's move into the jungle now. In the S tier, we have Evelynn, Fiddlesticks, Hecarim, Ivern, Jarvan, Kha'Zix, Kindred, Rek'Sai, and Rengar. Kindred and Ivern moved back up to the S tier after their nerfs just didn't really make any difference. Nidalee moves down to A, Lee Sin moves down to B, and Amumu moves back up into the A tier. Just like Kindred and Ivern, Rek'Sai's nerfs did not scratch the surface at all, and Rek'Sai is still winning a ridiculous amount of games and probably still the best jungler in the game. Her win rate is absolutely absurd, and it's pretty easy to see why. When you play against one or when you play her yourself, you just know how strong she is with her early game damage and ganks and her crazy durability with just a few items. We all thought Rek'Sai was going to disappear off the face of the earth with the removal of Prowler's Claw, but a few too many buffs to her base stats and damage alongside that bulky Stride Breaker build, Rek'Sai mains are just farming freelo every single game. Hecarim has proven himself worthy again of the S tier recently, and whether you build him full Muramana lethality or whether you go for a bulky bruiser type build with Triforce, this pony is just winning so many games. And all it takes is just a few too many early kills on this pony for him to ghost around the map and one-shot everybody. If you manage to pick Hecarim alongside enchanting supports and people that can buff and boost his movement speed too, it really is going to be free wins. One jungler that people have started to forget about a little bit recently is Evelynn. She still has a really impressive win rate across the majority of ranks, and every time she does get picked, you quickly remember how broken she can be. Evelynn's early game may be a little bit hit or miss, but once you get level 6 and unlock that permanent stealth, you can start creeping up on enemies, getting those surprise ganks off and getting insanely fed. The damage you can deal on Evelynn is pretty absurd once you get a bit of AP. And once you get that 25 stacked up Soul Stealer, your ultimate can one-shot entire backlines. Her playstyle in early game does take a bit of practice, but once you get the hang of it, she definitely is one of those champions you can farm free elo with, so give her a go. Moving into the mid lane now then, and in the S tier we have Ahri, Akshan, Anivia, Cassiopeia, Fizz, Neeko, Pantheon, Talon and Zed. Yes, Ahri moves back up into the S tier. Orianna moves up to A, and Yone and Diana move up to the B tier. So despite Neeko's nerfs last week, she's still staying up there in the S tier. She's not quite broken enough now to be played in every single different role, but in the mid lane she's still having fantastic results. Neeko's deceitful playstyle is enough to win her games on her own. You can lane gank as a minion, you can pretend to be a ward, and everything else along that goes with it. But it's actually her massive AoE damage, her fantastic gank setup, and her relentless poke too, which actually makes her so much harder to beat. So if you do enjoy Neeko, keep abusing it. Ahri has slowly climbed her way back into the S tier this week too, proving to be one of the most consistent mid lane picks you can go for in the game. Ahri is just very versatile right from the start of any game. She's great in draft against all sorts of lanes, she's great into comps with all sorts of teams, and she even has a few different build options to go for too. Ahri has fantastic burst damage, amazing mobility, and brilliant catch potential too with those charms. And if you can land those charms often enough, you're going to win a lot of games too. Fizz is another S tier mid laner in just such a great spot right now, with not too many difficult matchups and a lot of ones that you can just stomp and snowball so fast and so easily in. The thing is, if you get fed on Fizz, you can carry games so ridiculously hard. You can roam around the map and stack up that Soul Stealer super easily, and then once you've got those core items like Zhonya's and Lich Bane alongside your mythic, your flash QW can one-shot AD carries in seconds. If you go for Ingenious Hunter in the domination tree, your Zhonya's feels like it's permanently available too. No one's really banning Fizz yet, and he's winning a crazy amount of games, so give him a go if you haven't already. Let's move down to the AD carries now, and in the S tier we have Ashe, Draven, Ezreal, Jhin, Kai'Sa, Karthus and Miss Fortune. Switch remains a fantastic choice, but in a more specific draft than the others in the S tier, and Seraphine is still very underrated. Ashe is just living the dream right now. Triforce is a little bit overtuned at the moment on ranged users, and Ghost is probably the most broken summoner spell in the game. And when you combine these things with Ashe's traditional items like Kraken Slayer and Blade of the Ruined King, once she hits those items, she's so hard to deal with. Crazy DPS, relentless slows, fantastic poke, and of course her ultimate too, which allows her to set up fights unlike many other AD carries. Karthus in the bot lane still has one of the highest win rates in the entire game, and despite still having a relatively low pick rate, it's just a bit absurd how broken this has been for such a long time now. This pick is pretty unique because 1, it has incredibly good early game damage, but 2, it has some of the best scaling in the entire game. If you get ahead in the early game, happy days, GG, enemy FF15. If you get behind early game, it doesn't even matter if you int. As long as you can still farm up and still hit those power spikes, you can run into an entire team, deal tons of damage, and then just press R. It really is easy to be impactful on this champion, and if you haven't already been playing it, it's time to give it a go. Despite the Shiv nerfs, Kai'Sa's still in a fantastic spot in the S tier. You can still go for static Shiv into Nash's Tooth and Rageblade, or you can go full AP with Ludens instead. Or if you want to be a real hipster, you can actually just go for the traditional AD carry Kai'Sa build, which no one's been playing recently, but is actually surprisingly successful at the moment. Kai'Sa has tons of burst, tons of wave clear, fantastic poke, amazing self-build with her ultimate, and all the tools she needs to outplay enemies and carry by herself. So if you're good enough on this champion, just keep playing her. Finally, let's have a look at those supports then. And in the S tier we have Blitzcrank, Janna, Nautilus, Rakan, Rel, Sona, Soraka and Thresh. Yes, the hooking trio of Blitzcrank, Naut and Thresh are still rocking that bot lane at the moment, with those sustaining powerhouses Sona and Soraka also being fantastic choices. Rel's nerfs didn't really scratch the surface of just how OP she is at the moment, and she's still completely and utterly abusable in patch 13.13. Her rework definitely brought some positive changes to her kit, but unfortunately they just made her a bit too strong at the same time. Well, that's after the first round of buffs anyway, because the initial changes did nerf her into the ground. Riot are trying to make her an off-meta jungle pick, which is somewhat working because some people are having great success with it. But generally speaking, everybody is just abusing it in the support role. It's way too strong, and with picks like Samira, you simply cannot lose lane. Rakan is still untouched with no nerfs, and he's been having the season of his life. He's just such a versatile and flexible pick that you can take in any different team comp. He works so well with loads of different AD carries, he's really good against loads of matchups too, and as long as you can play him well enough, there's always potential to outplay, disengage, set up fights and everything else along that goes with it. Rakan is super mobile for a support, which means he's a lot of fun to play too. So if you do main support and you haven't really played him yet, it might be time to pick him up before he does get nerfed, because surely it's going to be sometime soon. Leona is definitely on her way back into the meta again, and her engaging, aggressive CC playstyle in the early game is not to be underestimated. Miss Fortune is in a surprisingly good spot right now, and this bot lane pairing with Leona is just a bit insane. That level 6 combo is ridiculously hard to outplay, and if enemies don't have flash or cleanse available, it's almost a guaranteed kill each and every time. Leona offers so much CC throughout games, from those lane phase level up all-ins at level 2 and 3 to those massive 5-man ultimate stuns in teamfights. She's always been a great fun support to play, and now that she's finally starting to prove her worth again, it's time to pick her back up again. Well, that's going to wrap up our updated tier list video for patch 13.13. Don't forget to check out Mobalytics before you go, and feel free to subscribe to our channel if you do enjoy our content. We wish you the best of luck guys with the last few weeks of the rank split, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.